Are we all moving to Lisbon? Portugal tells bosses it's illegal to contact employees after hours. Hi there, everyone. It's Jeff, and this is Plain English lesson number 421. JR is the producer, and he has uploaded this full lesson to plainenglish.com/421. Coming up today, the sweet sound of silence after 5 o'clock. That's the sound of your boss not texting or emailing you after your workday is done. And that sweet sound of silence will soon be your right if you're a remote worker in Portugal. But I am here to argue that this is not a good idea. Listen on for why I think so. In the second half of today's lesson, I'll show you how to use the English phrasal verb stick to, and JR has selected a song of the week by Sir Elton John. Let's get going. Portugal's parliament passed a new law that establishes a right to rest, and under this new right, bosses are not permitted to text or email their staff outside of working hours. Plus, companies with remote workers will soon be required to contribute financially to a portion of household expenses. And to combat the loneliness of remote work, employers will be required to organize occasional in-person gatherings. The law even requires that new parents be allowed to work at home until their child is 8 years old. This new law would not apply to the many digital nomads that have made Portugal home over the years. Many of them are their own bosses, are independent contractors, or work for foreign businesses. Still, for the many remote employees of Portuguese companies, it sounds like a good deal. Sign off at 5 o'clock, pour yourself a glass of Vinho Verde wine, and snack on some bacalhau, safe in the knowledge that you've left your work behind for the evening. But I'm not so sure this is a good idea, either for employers or for the remote workers themselves. At first, the new law sounds fair. Can't we all just agree on certain working times and stick to them? After all, we managed to have a fairly clear work-life division for many, many years before the advent of electronic devices. I would like to think that we can, in most cases, respect these boundaries. But the law doesn't say, in most cases. Employers can face fines for contacting employees outside of working hours. You might have noticed that I am both an employee of a large organization and the owner of a small business. I have thought about this new law as both an employee and a business owner, and I disagree with it from both perspectives. As an employee, for example, I admit that I would like to generally be free of the obligation to check work emails and respond to messages after hours. However, I also take pride in my work and I want to do a good job. At my job, I'm not evaluated on the number of hours I put in. I'm evaluated on my results. And I work on projects with people around the world, including in Asia. There are times when someone in Asia has a question for me at about 10 or 11 p.m. in Chicago. I can answer the question in just a few minutes, and that answer enables my colleague in Asia to have a full and productive workday. Should it be illegal for someone at work to reach out to me at 10 p.m. in that situation? I realize not everyone would want that, but I also don't think that that situation should be against the law. What's more, I also enjoy a certain freedom of schedule in my job. I can manage my schedule so that I can sneak out to do some errands in the afternoon and finish my work in the evening if I can manage it. Employers may be less likely to permit that if they are limited in the number of hours that they can contact me. For example, if my employer can only contact me for 8 hours a day, you can bet they'll want me sitting at my desk for every minute of those 8 hours. Well, I also thought about this question from the perspective of a business owner. I should state up front that Portugal's new law applies only to companies with 10 or more employees. My business has no employees. All the team members are contractors. However, a 10-person business is not a large business, so I think this logic still applies. I run a website that people access all over the world. PlainEnglish.com receives thousands of hits a day from people in every continent on the globe. A percentage of those people also pay a monthly subscription fee for enhanced content like video lessons, exercises, translations, and bonus audio. If there's a problem, I want to address it right away. I wouldn't bother a team member after hours for something small, but I would want a team that's responsive on important issues, even if it's outside their normal working hours. I'd be clear about this before hiring the individual, and I'd work with that person to find the right balance. Still, my website is available 24 hours a day. There could be problems at any hour. I'd want a team that can be flexible in their working hours, at least to address any big problems that may arise. Portugal says this law will make it an attractive destination for remote workers. But I think this will backfire and put Portuguese companies at a competitive disadvantage compared to other European companies. However, this law should put big employers the world over on notice. Employees are feeling burned out from the increasingly blurry boundaries between work and home life, especially when work and home are the same physical place. And if large companies can't help employees strike a balance between work and life, then governments are going to step in and clarify the boundary for them. I don't want to sound like an advocate for a 24-hour workday or an always-on attitude. A lot of the emails that I've sent and received after working hours are pointless and could have been saved for a 15-minute conversation in the morning. But a law prohibiting contact after working hours doesn't allow for a reasonable compromise. I have a feeling this is going to wind up being a bad deal for employees. Your employers are only going to bother you more during your 8 hours if they know they can't bother you later in the day. Today's English expression is stick to. When you stick to something, you continue doing that thing without changing. Earlier in this lesson, I asked a question. I said, can't we all just agree on a working schedule and stick to it? I was asking, can't we all just agree on a working schedule and follow that working schedule without changing it? If we stick to a schedule, we follow it without change. Wouldn't that make life so much easier? Just work from 8 to 5, or 10 to 6, or noon to 8, or 7 to 3, or whatever your schedule is established to be. Just make a schedule and stick to it. Sounds easy. Well, maybe it would be easy for you, but it would be hard for me to stick to just one work schedule. However, I have recently made a change in my life that involves sticking to a set schedule. I've long been a gym goer. I exercise multiple days a week. Before, I would choose those days depending on what I had going on that week. Sometimes I would go Monday and Tuesday, but then not again until Friday. Then other times I would like to go on the weekends, and sometimes I would rest on the weekends and go to the gym during the work week. But listen, I discovered that those constant changes were adding stress to my life, and I recently decided to stick to a consistent schedule. I now go to the gym on the same days every week with no exceptions. I stick to that schedule, I follow it, and I don't change. It doesn't have to be a schedule. Some people have suggested that I take this plain English platform and expand it to other languages. They like it so much that they love to learn German in the same way that they learn English, for example? Well, I'm flattered by the suggestion, but I'm going to stick to English. I'm going to continue doing only English, and I'm not going to change. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, some countries took drastic steps to try to eliminate the disease within their borders. Australia, New Zealand, Taiwan, and China are examples. But now, 2 years into the pandemic, and especially with the highly contagious Delta variant, most countries have decided that they're going to have to manage this coronavirus more realistically. Australia is done with lockdowns, for example. But one country is sticking to the zero COVID policy, China. For now, China is sticking to the policy that they'll quarantine and shut down local areas if even one person tests positive, while other countries have gradually started to accept that some level of COVID is inevitable. China is sticking to its zero COVID policy. China is following that policy without changing it. You can stick to a diet if you follow that diet without changing it. It's difficult to stick to diets that are highly restrictive. That's why many nutritionists say you should choose a diet that you can stick to. Choose a diet that you know you can follow. If you choose a diet that you'll just break in a couple of weeks, you're not doing yourself any favors. The same goes for a budget. If you create a budget that shows you'll save half your take-home pay, that's amazing. But can you stick to that budget? Just like a diet, it's best to create a budget you know you'll be able to follow without breaking and without changing. Create a realistic budget and stick to it. That's my advice. JR's song of the week is Don't Go Breaking My Heart by Elton John. It's a duet that he sang with Kiki Dean in 1976. They go back and forth throughout the song, one singing, Don't Go Breaking My Heart, and the other answering, I Won't Go Breaking Your Heart. In 1994, Elton John released a version with the American drag queen RuPaul singing the other lines. And that's all for today. What do you think about that right to relax? Is this a good idea? Am I just spoiling the party with my workaholic American viewpoint? Let me know in our Facebook group. Share your opinion with me and your fellow Plain English listeners by joining the group at plainenglish.com/Facebook. We'll probably talk about this topic on a future live conversation call too. If you're not familiar with that, it's a great benefit of Plain English Plus. 3 times a month, we get together for a live small group conversation call. We usually touch on topics from recent lessons, and I suspect that this may be a topic on a future call. If you'd like to join a call like that, we'd love to have you. Just visit us at plainenglish.com/plus, Plus, and sign up for a monthly or annual membership. As soon as you're in, you'll see the links to the next live calls on your brand new Plus homepage. Well, that's all for today. We'll be back on Monday with a new lesson. See you then.